Good evening, families. I am Mrs. Romo and Mrs. Candelario, the Spanish interpreters for this event. Please note that everything said in this session will be interpreted into Spanish and it will be kept confidential. Please communicate directly to the speaker. Buenas noches, familia. Soy la señora Romo y la señora Candelario, intérpretes para este evento. Por favor, sepa que todo lo que se diga en esta sesión será interpretado en español y se mantendrá confidencial. Por favor, comuníquese directamente con el hablante. Gracias. Usted va a encontrar en la parte inferior una bola del mundo en la que usted tiene que hacer clic para elegir el idioma. Por favor, seleccione español si ese es su deseo. Gracias.
Good evening. My name is Nakia Hardy, and I serve as Deputy Superintendent for Durham Public Schools. We would like to welcome you to our listening and learning session today regarding our district programs. We intentionally named this project Growing Together, Increasing Equity and Access in Durham Public Schools, because there is a critical need for your voice in this process. We appreciate you taking your time this evening to talk with us. This listening and learning project directly links to our strategic plan, specifically Priority 5, ensure fiscal and operational responsibility, and our school boundaries and student assignment addendum strategies. Multiple departments have worked together to address these two areas. Evaluating our existing Durham Public Schools system and school choice, student assignment policies, school boundaries and magnet priority zones across elementary, middle, and high school levels, and to develop an integrated plan grounded in equity that balances programming, policies, and geographic boundaries. There is a multi-departmental team that has been working together, and this team includes myself, Dr. Julius Monk from Operational Services, Melody Marshall from Student Assignment, Dr. Julie Pack from CTE and Magnet Programs, Dr. Kelvin Bullock from the Office of Equity Affairs, Chip Sutterth and Sheena Cooper from the Office of Public Affairs, Philip Day and Matthew Palmer from the Office of School Planning, and Dr. Debbie Pittman from the Office of Specialized Services. Again, we would like to welcome you on behalf of our board and our superintendent, Dr. Mabinga, for joining us this evening so that we can hear directly from you. Please make sure as you're participating today to use all the tools that we'll share with you that are available so that we can hear your voice. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Debbie Pittman, Assistant Superintendent for Specialized Services. Dr. Pittman.
Thank you, Dr. Hardy, and good evening, everyone. We truly appreciate you joining this session, especially as we close out our school year and wrap up our learning. As we launch into this work today, it's going to be really important to set a context in the broader context of where this fits into the picture within Durham Public Schools. As Dr. Hardy shared on the next slide, you'll see the 4 strategies on the addendum strategy work around school boundaries and student assignment. Of particular focus this evening are the last 2. One is we want to look at our systems of school choice, our assignment policies, and our school boundaries and magnet priority zones across elementary, middle, and high school. Tonight, we're going to focus a lot on elementary, but you'll hear a broader picture around all of those levels. And then from this work and from your input tonight and ongoing and over the next several months, we are going to develop an integrated plan that is grounded in equity, that balances programming, policies, and our geographic boundaries. So as we look at our next slide, I want to just share a moment of how some multiple pieces or 3 major components integrate, interconnect, and cascade into one another so that you can get a sense of where the policy and magnet program work fits into the larger picture. One of the pieces that we have been very intentional about over the last several months and over this last year is looking at making sure that transitions and disruptions, so to speak, for students are minimized. So that as we are looking at pre-K programming and our separate EC classroom needs for our specialized learners, that we have a continuity across a building so that when a child may be placed in a pre-K program at one elementary school, some of those specialized programs may or may not be housed in that same building. And so what we're looking at ensuring is if there is a disconnect from pre-K to the K-5 program, that we're making some deliberate alignments. Why is that important? Because as we begin to adjust and move and align classrooms, this will impact the capacity of a building to house additional programs or additional students. So it connects then to how are we looking at our magnet programs and how are they aligning across our district? And then subsequently, once we have those two major pieces secured, we in turn will be looking at our school boundaries. And as you know, over the next several years, we're going to be in a great place of needing to build a new school F, an elementary F. We're renovating 6 elementary school campuses. We are about to open Lyons Farm Elementary School, which had been previously known as New Elementary C. And of course, we're building a new Northern High School. So as all of this work starts to evolve over time, we're going to need to continue to engage our community through a robust and comprehensive community engagement process to make sure that there are opportunities for all members of our community to participate. This is going to be facilitated through a variety of community meetings, online resources, with plans to bring some initial recommendations to the board later this fall. So next slide, please. So we began some of this preliminary conversation around our work with the policy and our planning with students and with some of our community partners earlier this spring in preparation for this phase of our work. So as we continue our conversations this evening, we want to spend a few minutes sharing our historical context that shows the evolution of our demographics of our district over time. Dr. Kelvin Bullock, our Executive Director of Equity Affairs, has prepared a video to help us launch into this discussion. So as you watch the video, grab a pen and a piece of paper, and over the next few slides, we want to begin to gather your input. I want you to jot down some reflections that you have in reaction to what you're hearing. And we want to start to shape and build into some values. What are the values that have been reflected, and what are some of the values our community and our school district should be embracing that we want to lift up to our board to help shape our policy and practice around school boundary planning and our magnet programs. So if we could begin the video, please.
Hello, my name is Dr. Daniel Kelvin Bullock, and I'm the Executive Director for Equity Affairs for Durham Public Schools. I want to thank you for joining us and utilizing this opportunity to give us some feedback on how we can go about increasing equity and access to our magnet and specialty programs in Durham Public Schools. During this video, I'm going to provide information on the purpose of this community engagement effort and some of the ongoing work to address student enrollment and diversity in Durham Public Schools. I'm going to begin with some data and some historic information about Durham Public Schools to better understand the context of where we are today and why we are engaging in this effort to get community feedback on our magnet and specialty programs. So as you will see on the screen, these are the current demographics, racial demographics of the students enrolled in Durham Public Schools. You will see that about 41% of our students are Black, a little over 33% Latino, and about 19.3% of our students are white. In addition to that, you have about 4.2% of our students who are multiracial, and you see the representation of different groups on the remainder of the pie chart. Now, We're going to take some time to look at diversity and integration data over time and some of our historic data, actually dating back to the city and county schools here in Durham. So in 1991-92, which was the last school year where we had a city school system in Durham and a county school system, you can look at these two charts and see the differences in the demographics of the two systems. I will give you a moment to just look at the differences between the city schools and the county schools, and please make a note of the enrollment in each system at the bottom of the screen. So as you can see, these were two very different systems in terms of the racial demographics of each system. You also see that the county school system was much larger in terms of enrollment in the 1991-92 school year. So at the conclusion of this school year, the city and county school systems were merged into Durham Public Schools. So 1992-93 was the first year that Durham Public Schools existed. And in that year, in Durham Public Schools' first year of existence, the racial demographics of the graduates of DPS looked like this. So as you can see, the demographics of the first graduating class from Durham Public Schools as a whole across the district, including the high schools such as Northern High School, Southern High School, Hillside, Durham High, Jordan High School, these were the demographics of the graduates of those schools in 1993. You may also note that the majority of the students in this first graduating class were white. We will see the transition in the demographics of the graduates and students in Durham Public Schools in the years to come. So we skip ahead roughly 12 years to 2004, 2005. And there we see the demographics of the students enrolled in Durham Public Schools has shifted pretty drastically. At that point, about 59.2% of students in DPS were Black, just under 12% of students were Latino, and about a quarter of the students enrolled in DPS were white. We skip ahead to last year, the 2019-20 school year, and we see that the Black student population was around 41.6%, the Latino student population just under 33%, and about 19% of students in DPS were white. So again, just thinking about where the district was in that first year in 1993, as far as racial demographics, we have seen the evolution of the students enrolled in DPS with a decrease in white students enrolled, a significant increase in the percentage of Latino students enrolled, and actually an initial increase in the Black students enrolled. But in recent years, we've seen a decrease in the percentage of Black students enrolled in DPS. Some points to consider with
So good evening, everyone. We're going to stop the video there so we can have some time to capture your thoughts. But good evening. My name is Melody Marshall, and I am honored to serve as the Director of Student Assignment for our district. But you'll see what you saw in Dr. Bullock's video demonstrated some pretty dynamic historical data about Durham Public Schools that this team has been studying over the past 2 years. And it's with this data, along with lottery application trend data, and research from national and local collaborators, that we've learned that school choice without clear goals and mechanisms for integration lead to increased segregation. Next slide, please. So the chart you see before you was shared with our school board in a previous presentation, but it's been updated to, sorry, my battery's going down. There we go. Don't want to lose you. But again, this chart has been updated to reflect the 2021 data for our elementary magnet schools. So if we could take a moment and look at that chart together, you'll see in the first column our elementary magnet schools are listed along with their different themes. So you'll see IB programs, Montessori, arts and humanities, STEAM, global studies, and year-round. And then as you look at the column headers, you'll see key information about the schools, including the number of applications that we received in the 2021 lottery, the number of seats available at each school, the acceptance rate at that school. And then we also listed the acceptance rates of applicants who listed that school as their first choice. Next, you'll see the percent of free and reduced lunch at the school and the school's grade and growth. In the last two columns, you'll see the percentage of students of color in that school and how that compares to our district average. And our district average of students of color is 81%. So as you scan down each column, you'll see the variation for each metric. And in the small table on the right, you'll see averages of demographics across our district. And as you can see, there are some pretty wide differences school by school in comparison to the district's socioeconomic averages and demographic averages. Next slide. In this chart, we've taken some of the data that we showed in the previous slide to highlight 2 data points in our elementary magnet schools. And we've highlighted students of color and free and reduced lunch. So you'll see the top row shows the district percent of students of color in Durham Public Schools. And we've that bar is in red, and the percent of free and reduced lunch rates in blue. And we use free and reduced lunch as a metric to measure socioeconomic status. So this chart will help us see how magnet schools compare to the district average of each of those data points by comparing the red district bar to the red individual school or the blue district bar to the blue individual school. And again, there are some pretty wide differences across schools in the comparison to the district. And I want to remind our community or even inform you that diversity is one of the guiding principles of magnet policy. So one of our questions will be to you is, how should we define diversity in the framework of equity? Next slide, please. So over the course of our learning, from our history and our data, as well as from preliminary collaboration from the community, as well as engagement efforts with our students, our youth ambassadors, and voices of our community and parents, we've come to learn that our initial intentions regarding magnet schools have evolved. So where we were working towards choice, we're led to some confusion. And as we work towards diversity, it's led us to inequity. And when we were really putting our efforts towards efficiency, it's led to some pretty incredible complexity. Next slide, please. So why are we here? What does all of this information mean? When magnet schools opened 30 years ago, the policy and rules were designed to ensure that equity and diversity existed across our district. However, as the very fabric of Durham County and Durham City has changed over the years, these rules and policy need a fresh look, and we need to determine whether or not they still reflect the values of our community and our school district. For example, the magnet policy contains the rules about priority that govern access into the lottery, including sibling priorities and geographic priorities and program and calendar links from elementary to middle to high school, as well as how we allocate our resources such as transportation and building facility usage. So the bottom line is these rules impact equity and access across our schools. So here we are at this very critical juncture to align the magnet policy of our district with the work of equity that our district has put so much effort in. And we cannot do this work without you. We need your input in shaping the revisions to the very policies that provide access to our schools and programs and balance equity across our district. So I know we've thrown a lot at you this evening, so we're gonna pause for a moment and take some time for you to collect your thoughts about what you've heard so far. So the next part of our session, you will be listening to you. And so Dr. Julie Pack, our Executive Director of CTE and Magnet Programs, will facilitate this listening session. Dr. Pack.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. So what we want to do is collect some feedback from you first off on these questions that we put on the screen. The questions are, what does equity in Durham Public Schools look like in terms of school choice and student assignments? What opportunities do you see for DPS to increase operational efficiencies like transportation or facility use? And what kinds of programs would you like to see in DPS? And who should have access to those programs? So we're going to collect your feedback in one of two ways. We'll put the questions in the chat and you can respond to them in the chat, or we're also going to use a Padlet. So I'm going to show you that now. And I'll put the link to the Padlet in the chat. And sorry. So I am not able to access the chat while I'm presenting. So would someone please put that in the chat? So this is a Padlet. It basically has the same questions that we had on the other screen. And to answer a question or to add a thought, you just simply press the plus button and type in what you want to say, and then click off of it and it's there. And if you see something that someone else has put on there and you agree with it, you can click the heart button to like it. So again, you can put your answers here, or you can put them in the chat. And we're going to put the questions in the chat as well. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes to do that and respond, and then we'll come back. thank you for continuing to add your thoughts to the Padlet and or the chat. We appreciate your thoughts and your input, and we want to collect that. We're going to move forward. Unfortunately, we don't have the opportunity to have open conversation at this time on this platform, but we want to use your thoughts and collect those and let you know that this is just the beginning of this process. And so we were going to have more opportunities for you to engage with us. And to talk about what that looks like in the next stages, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Pittman, who's going to tell us about the next steps.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Pack. So our next steps, I was just reviewing the Padlet. There's some awesome feedback in there, so thank you for sharing your thoughts. But over the next week, we're going to host 3 more sessions for community engagement, and these are going to be in person. The registration is available on our website, and we do look forward to a similar format such as this evening, but in which we will provide in-person engagement. And those locations are located on the table. If you'll look, June 7, June 8, and June 9 at the Staff Development Center at the Holton Center and Hillside High School. But looking at the table, you can see we've been trying to be intentional, connecting with our principals, connecting with those who worked in our schools with magnet programs, our magnet coordinators, our DPS employees, and now our students, our family, and our community. What's going to be important about tonight is this is not the end of the feedback opportunity. There will be additional sessions throughout the summer that we want to continue engaging with you. But after this evening, in the next day or so, you should be getting an invitation to complete a Growing Together survey. So if you've registered for tonight and you're on this evening's session, you'll get a direct email from, I think, the Office of Public Affairs. However, share this with your neighbors, your friends in Durham. We want to hear from you. And if you see this link, the engage.dps.net, that is a valuable resource website. Not only will the survey be housed there, but there's additional information about this work, our timeline, and the project. So please consider hooking into that link and seeing some additional resources that are available for you. So if you will go to the next slide. These are our immediate next steps. So we are holding in the orange box, you can see our stakeholders are providing feedback through our listening and learning tour, and of course through the survey. And then on Thursday, June the 17th, the Board of Education is holding a full day retreat. And one of the topics that will be shared with the board is an update on this project work. And what we would like to be able to do through these stakeholder feedback sessions and through survey responses that have come in up to that point, we will share some preliminary initial findings. However, that survey will continue to remain open through the end of June. So we want to be able to collect comprehensive feedback from everyone. And then in the red box, Durham Public Schools will continue to, as we shape and use the guidance from the retreat, your feedback, we will begin to shape some recommendations. We want to continue to engage and get interaction and feedback from our community over the summer months. And our target is the administration wants to be able to provide some policy recommendation to the board in the fall of 2021. And so if we go to the last slide, that is our formal end of this evening's presentation. As Dr. Pack shared, the Padlet, please continue to share any feedback on the Padlet that you wish. Watch for that survey. The survey has some open-ended opportunity questions so that you can provide comprehensive feedback in that format. And we look forward to continued engagement through the coming months. So thank you and good evening.